Hello and welcome back to the channel. As I promised earlier, I'm starting the functional programming series, and I hope that the series will be, well, thorough enough to provide you with all the information that you need to dive into the functional programming world in JavaScript. So first things first, why I'm not doing this in TypeScript as I typically do with TypeScript with React tutorials. Well, that's due to the fact that the sources I'm using to record that are written with JavaScript, but also functional programming can be a little bit different when it comes to handling types. Although the libraries that are, well, pretty much the complete functional implementation, like Lambda or Lodash, have their types provided in TypeScript, we'll stick to JavaScript because that would be an additional overhead in this complex enough topic. So this is going to be an intro and I'm going to guide you through the why and what we'll be doing here. So, oh, this is working. Maybe that's working. So why? Well, this channel is focusing mainly on React and Redux and web development. But if you look into the React and Redux themselves, they're based on the functional concepts that are really important to our programming world. For example, in React, we are composing the components together with functional paradigms. And if you take a look at the React Ruby and React component, what you have there is a simple function that is taking the props and providing you with new UI. There are, of course, additional things when we're building React app like context, state, hooks, and so forth and so on. But if you take a look at the simples, the most dumb component is just a function that takes an input and returns some output. Okay. The very same goes for Redux. So in Redux, we're providing an action to a reducer and it will return a new copy of a state. And what is great about Redux is that this is pretty much deterministic, meaning if we have the same state and provide the same function, we should always get the same state updated, the same output. So as we'll learn, the reducers are pure functions. And this is also a really important concept in functional programming. So given the fact that we'd like to dive deeper into the React and Redux and extend our knowledge about JavaScript and programming, I think it will be really beneficial to spend some time trying to figure out the functional programming. There are some advantages to functional programming that may be a little bit lacking when you're doing object-oriented approach. One is scalability, meaning you can ask yourself, do you have to refactor your code constantly when you're adding a new parts or extending some parts or modules of your code? Is your code modular enough? Meaning, will a change in one function or in one module impact and probably cause bugs in other modules? Reusability, meaning how often you have to repeat or copy your own code and maybe add some slight changes there. Sorry. The stability. How hard is it to write unit tests for code? And this is actually a big deal because sometimes we skip writing tests because our code, our functions are too complex and it's hard to figure out how to write the unit test properly. So functional programming, as you will see, is about writing very small functions that are basically doing one thing and then combining and composing those together. So if your function is really simple, it's really easy to write unit tests for that. How easy it is to understand your code? Because when you're working in a big project with other developers, believe me, you will spend way more time reading the code and trying to figure it out than actually writing it. At the very beginning, your velocity is high. You're moving very fast and adding new features fast, but this will grind almost to a halt as the project is developed, and it will completely block you if you didn't write your code so that other people can understand it. It will pile up. And there's another really important reason to grasp the concept of functional programming. You are probably doing it already. JavaScript and React and Redux are constructed in such a way that you're pretty much forced to use at least some concepts of the functional programming. We often do use stuff like filter, map, or reduce. Sometimes we pass a function to another function, but we're not always doing that consciously and with a plan in mind. Therefore, we're not doing this effectively. And I hope that understanding functional programming at least a little bit will help us do it way better. So yeah, you're probably doing some parts of functional programming, but you don't realize that yet. Or maybe you just realize a part of it. So how we're gonna go about this series? Well, basically, I will be basing this of, well, two things. One are books about functional programming that I find very helpful when it comes to digging into the subject. One is Luis's Atencio Functional Programming in JavaScript, which I really recommend. Here you can find lots of information about the functional libraries like Lodash or Lambda. But not only that, also the stuff about the JavaScript and functional JavaScript. And the second is Eric Elliott Composing Software, which is not only a great introduction to functional programming, but also to the concept of composing parts of your software as a whole. So definitely you can take the ideas from that book and apply them to other languages that have the functional paradigm built into them, like Dart or Swift. Second, I'm gonna be basing this off of my own experience. I have built few big projects in JavaScript and React, and there were sometimes no other way than just to adhere to the functional programming to solve issues or to make the code more readable. We will be looking into a little bit of the functional programming libraries I mentioned, Lodash and Lambda, but to be honest, you can always pick them up as you need. I believe that the knowledge of what is built into the language is way more beneficial than deeply studying any kind of library. I will be using two tools. That's gonna be Quokka.js that you can check out for running the code. It's way more effective than just building some kind of node app and running the scripts. Sometimes the double HTTPS shouldn't be here, but never mind. Sometimes when I would like to show you something that needs some kind of output, like presenting something on a screen in a page, I will probably be using stuff like CodePen, which is very simple but very nice web IDE. So what we're gonna look into when it comes to that series, and what I'll be trying to show you and learn along with you, we'll look into pure functions and functions as a value, as this is the most well-known subject in functional programming, and it's the very basis. I will try to explain the immutability and composing of functions and objects, then the higher order function and carrying the functions. We'll look into the functors and categories, but I will try to look into them from our developers and programming perspective rather than diving deep into the math. You can definitely look through YouTube to find the courses or the series that are focused strictly into the math and the category theory, which is very interesting but very complex subject. Oh, I will try to show you what is the functional approach to handle the asynchronous operation and how to isolate so-called side effects in your software. And I will try to provide as many examples as possible. I believe that's not all. And as the series envelops, we'll find another interesting subjects in functional programming. So yeah, thank you for that. And as mentioned, and as you can see here, I'll be spending my upcoming time, well, my upcoming free time, trying to guide you through the wonderful jungle of functional programming in JavaScript. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.